they're facing a lot of uncertainty in the world around them with the US elections and things like this coming up.
Xi Jinping, of course, during his reign, that he did make China a great power, but he also created a lot of problems.
A further dimension is also the fact that local government debt is really the big black hole.
You can be a great power. You could be a big military power, but you have to be a responsible power.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Divi Gopalan. Garbage time. In sports, the term refers to the lost part of a game where the losing side is so far behind that the result is inevitable and players are just going through the motion to reach the final buzzer. Well, in China, that term, or to be exact, the phrase garbage time in history, has become a social media buzzword to describe the country's state of affairs. While it's not game over, we want to understand what is really going on in the country as it marks 75 years since the founding of the People's Republic of China. We'll be getting the bird's eye view from Taipei with Chen Mumin, professor at the Graduate Institute of International Politics in National Hsing University. But first, we will head to the United Kingdom, where Kerry Brown is standing by. He's a former diplomat and now a professor at King's College London. He's also the best-selling author and has written more than 20 books on all aspects of contemporary China. His latest book, The Great Reversal, Britain, China, and the 400-Year Contest for Power, was just released this July. Thank you very much for being on the program. We started the show with the sports term garbage time, which refers to a time during a game where defeat becomes inevitable. And that's being used a lot on social media to describe what is going on in China. What to you does that say about general sentiment on the ground in China?
Yeah, so I was in China a few weeks ago at the end of August, beginning of September. And I think, it's obviously a very strange time. There's a leadership that's been in place under Xi Jinping for a long time, so there's stability, but there's been significant economic turbulence. And it's sort of hard to read the mood because on the one hand, the country is looking prosperous, looking like it's doing okay. The logistics, the infrastructure is all good. On the other hand, you've got a lot of people expressing quite a lot of resentment over the lockdowns during the pandemic and frustration at the fact that the economy still seems to be mired in all sorts of issues, the housing market, things like that. I think that it's difficult to really kind of read the mood at the moment because there's real restrictions on what people can say in China. It's not like there's a big movement opposing the government, but it's not like you really detect a lot of enthusiasm too. So I think we're kind of going to have to just watch this very, very carefully. I would never be complacent about China and how it could turn up really, really unexpected things. But it doesn't look to me at the moment like the Chinese government, the leaders under Xi Jinping, Li Qiang, people like this, have a very clear plan. But they certainly have a plan that has been convincing for the outside world. And also, of course, they're facing a lot of uncertainty in the world around them with the US elections and things like this coming up. So they don't really have much to give them comfort at the moment to get them through this strange and, kind of difficult period that they seem to be in.
You said it, at the heart of the economic malaise is the property market, where billions, if not trillions of dollars have been wiped out from just homeowners' wealth or from people's savings accounts. So the Chinese government in the latest is taking some drastic measures, which includes cutting bank reserves to its lowest level in years, lowering borrowing costs, easing home purchase rules to try to revive the property market. But do you get a sense, and we know the general message from there that it's bad, but do you get a sense of how bad it really is?
So the property market has been a source of anxiety for a long time. But there are people complaining at the moment that, prices are falling significantly. A person I knew in Shanghai, for instance, they thought originally that their apartment, they were looking to buy it for 20 million renminbi, and then they felt that it had already fallen to 15 million and may even go further down to 10 million. I mean, these are significant falls, obviously. In any economy, this would be a problem. I think for the Chinese also, there's this sort of sense of insecurity that's been long known. So people are saving, they're still saving a lot, and that's a problem for the government, enormous amounts of household saving. And, kind of consumer confidence is very patchy. Sure, you go to Shanghai and you see people shopping in Nanjing Road and places like that, but you do get a sense that people are being very, very cautious, and there's not the spontaneity there used to be. I think a further dimension is also the fact that local government debt is really the big, big black hole. One colleague I spoke to in Shenzhen said that it could be trillions. I mean, we're talking about enormous amounts of money that local governments have got in debt. They're basically rolling over those debts. That could just accumulate like a huge Ponzi scheme. It's very hard to assess because there isn't a huge amount of transparency.
Speaking of the lack of transparency, it's been called the strangulation of information, where, you know, even data like youth unemployment or just basic data that used to be easily accessible is now no longer being released. So that would beg to the question that how much do the highest levels of leadership really do know or understand about what is happening, especially when it comes to the economy?
So there have been reports that not the sort of most well-known, you know, kind of normal economists or officials on the economy have been, you know, kind of summoned to Beijing to talk to Xi Jinping to give different perspectives. You know, there seems to be some notion that the leadership are trying to get ideas. I mean, the lack of information is a two-way street. I mean, the government in Beijing is extremely cautious and really doesn't want people to have access to information that they feel is misinterpreted. The number of foreign journalists, and foreign journalists have always had a tough time in China and been regarded with great suspicion, but that has fallen. I mean, statistics for the number of foreign journalists based in the place now are really the worst they've been for decades. And for sure, the Chinese government might not trust them, but these are also people that give the outside world some information that is probably kind of more trusted than that of the government. Sometimes that's useful. There's also the problem of, you know, kind of the fact that there are very few outsiders going to China now. One statistic is, you know, 80,000 Americans were studying in China before the pandemic. Now that's down to 8,000. There's not enough people going to see what's going on. It might be that we are too gloomy about the Chinese economy, and maybe amazing things are happening. It might be that we're way, way, way less informed than we should be about coming kind of big problems. But at the moment, we just don't know, and that's not good for anyone. Information is really important, and there's just not enough of it at the moment.
Right, and speaking of the leadership of Xi Jinping in the past, you know, you'd get a collective leadership competition for power among among rival factions to keep checks and balances in place. Are we seeing any of that now? And where's that space with Xi Jinping in power?
So there's no overt signs of any dissent. But there's sort of little clues that things are not as harmonious as they should be. We remember last year the Foreign Minister Qin Gang and the Minister of Defense Liu Xianfu just suddenly disappeared, and then were, you know, kind of, well, in one case expelled from the party, in the other, you know, kind of there are reports that he's resurfaced recently, Qin Gang, but nothing definite. I mean, you know, these sort of show that there's a leadership that is not completely in control, though it has that image in the outside world. I don't think we're seeing people overtly, you know, kind of speak against or act against the Xi leadership within the elite anyway. But we've also got a situation where he is 71, 72 now. You know, he's got to kind of think of the next generation of leaders. And I think we're looking at provincial leaders, people elsewhere that might be able to be elite leaders in the future. That's got to happen at some point. Xi Jinping will need to be reappointed for a fourth term if he wishes in 3 years' time at the 2027 Congress. I mean, that would mean that he would be well into his 70s, going towards 80. When another successor was to be possible, we've got to have signs of someone coming along. Otherwise, we can end up with a situation we had in the United States recently, of a man in his 80s having to suddenly say that he's dropping out and creating all sorts of instability. Well, in that system, you can do that kind of thing. It's just about possible. In China, I think it would be extremely disruptive. So at the elite level, yeah, there's certainly one big uncertainty in what does happen when Xi Jinping is no longer part of the scene.
But those will be massive shoes to fill. He chairs at least 5 central commissions. He's the commander-in-chief of the military. Is there anyone that's surfacing that could possibly be someone that's going to be groomed or be a successor to him at this point in time?
No one obvious. Li Qiang, his premier, I mean, is number 2 in the hierarchy, but he doesn't look like he's being groomed for anything except just to take the rap on the economy. The people in the Politburo, that doesn't really look like there's people there that are looking to be kind of made successors. The trusted people are administrators, people like Cai Ji or Ding Xuexiang. I mean, they're not kind of big ticket politicians. But we have to remember that before Xi Jinping was elevated around 2007, I mean, he didn't really, look to many people like he would be able to stand in and be the kind of politician he's become. So people grow into these positions. My hunch is that there will be people somewhere. I mean, there's going to be probably people who are in their 50s, maybe kind of already starting to kind of appear on the political scene, who will play a more prominent role. I don't imagine it's going to be a smooth process, but it has to be a process that eventually works, because the elite leadership is so important in this system. And if there's a clash and civil war, the whole thing falls apart. So they'll have to find some route, but we don't see it at the moment.
Another thing we've seen under Xi Jinping's tenure is that national security has superseded almost every other policy, often at the detriment of the economy, where we're seeing businessmen targeted, we're seeing big, really profitable companies also targeted and affecting jobs, and also putting off foreign investment. Why is that?
I think that a lot of the kind of issues about the non-state sector and then private investment, lack of confidence, were because of uncertainty in the Chinese economy, also because of the really tough relations that China is having with the United States at the moment and is likely to continue having, meaning that, for foreign investments of all types in China, it's not been easy. There's also structural reasons. I mean, China is clearly trying to deal with its economic problems at the moment by, kind of new technologies, creating new innovations, putting massive amounts of investment into research and development, something like, kind of $600 billion a year. I mean, unprecedented levels. If you think the UK, I think we put about 19 billion, US dollars a year into research and development. I mean, you see the difference in scale. So I think China is trying to basically do something like the South Koreans did probably in the 1990s and create a very, very new economic model. But it's doing it, as ever, at a speed and on a scale which has not been tried before. I think that they're going to have success in some areas. I mean, electronic vehicles and BYD have been big examples of this. They are really, really far advanced in some areas of AI. But in other areas, we talked about youth unemployment earlier and the figure probably being way higher than we think it is. There's big problems in the economy that will not be easy to solve just by bunging loads of R&D money at it. So this is going to be a very, very patchy, complicated situation. But I always feel that people are over pessimistic about the Chinese economy sometimes. In the last 40 years, many times I've been told the Chinese economy is really, really on the skids. In the late 1990s, during the entry to WTO, in 2008, I was told this, 2015, when the stock exchange in Shanghai kind of fell. Well, until now, there's been things happen. It might be that this time that doesn't happen. But my money is usually on there being some way to find, a pathway through, even though this time that path looks like it's taking a lot of effort to find.
Now, this is most likely just because things are so different, a point of non-comparison, but I'm going to ask you anyway. You were a diplomat in Beijing between 1998 and 2005. How would you compare the time then, the environment then, when it comes to people's aspirations or the direction China was developing, to what we're seeing now?
Well, 20 years ago, China was just entering the WTO, and I think we felt that it was going to be a tough thing for China to do. The World Trade Organization, its companies would be exposed to foreign competition. Its rural sector, which was so important, was going to really need, a revolution to try and become more productive. But we were over pessimistic. I mean, in the next 10 years, China undertook a absolute, kind of enormous factory of GDP growth and quadruple the size of its economy. I mean, this is not going to happen now. It's a very different situation. But I think the exuberance of that time eventually is something that stays with me. We were gloomy, and then suddenly China did things that were unexpected. with China, the only thing that I've learned in 33 years of dealing with this extraordinary place is, expect the unexpected, know that there's so many things we don't know, be very wary of people telling you that they're going to, there's certain things are definitely going to happen, keep an open mind, and just understand that, China's success or failure is our success or failure, because if the Chinese economy does tank, we are all going to hit really, really severe turbulence. It is not a good thing, whether we like or dislike the system, and we dislike or like, the Chinese government. Well, okay, everyone's got their view on that. There's very valid reasons to be pretty kind of negative and critical, but China's failure is not a good thing.
Your latest book examines how the relationship between Britain and China shaped the modern world. But if we were to fast forward to today, how do you see China's relations, particularly with the West, shaping the world order?
I think China has got a very different set of options now. I mean, the West and Europe and America are important and will continue to be important. But, China's just hosted a big summit of African leaders in Beijing. It's hosted, leaders from the Middle East. It's got a role in Central Asia, of course. It's got a massive role in Asia. And these are countries, India, Pakistan, Indonesia. I mean, they have really different approaches and attitudes to China. They are used to dealing with China diplomatically in ways which are different to the West. I think we have to remember that diplomacy in this era is going to be different. It's not going to be about, dominant single powers like the United States. It's going to be about, kind of almost different sorts of networks and running systems across the whole globe. And, in some areas, America will still be incredibly important. In other areas, China has real kind of resonance now. I mean, it's able to do things as a power in Africa, the Middle East, Latin America and elsewhere that, other powers can't. So I think we're going to see that kind of world, a more complicated world.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor Kerry Brown from King's College in London, for your insight and your time. We are now joined by former Taiwan diplomat Chen Mumin, professor at the Graduate Institute of International Politics in National Chongqing University in central Taiwan's Taichung City. Great to have you on the program. You recently said that Taiwan has the best view to look into China and understand China more than any other country. Given that, what do you say is the popular sentiment, or what people in China itself are saying about the leadership of Xi Jinping?
Okay. We know Xi Jinping came to power in 2012. So he has been the highest leader of China in the past 12 years. And during this time, of course, China's economic growth developed a lot and also became a very big military power. But also under Xi Jinping's leadership, a lot of domestic problems also arose. We know that in recent years, China have more domestic economic problems, including unemployment and also the disparity, between different cities and places. And also China's relation with neighbors, with Japan, Taiwan, and a lot of neighboring countries also get worse. So I think that Xi Jinping, of course, during his reign, that he did make China a great power. But he also created a lot of problems that right now China actually has more, if we don't say enemies, but China has more adversaries, and also its relation with the neighboring countries also get worse right now. That's the situation we see.
Right, and I definitely do want to talk about the economy, as you mentioned. But before we go to that, I just want to kind of zoom in on the Chinese CCP leader. What do you think are the significant shifts you've seen in the CCP leadership since the third plenum in July? Recently, there was a removal of a commentary praising Xi and his family. What does that say to you about how people are feeling about him, or what the general atmosphere is towards him?
Okay. We know that the biggest challenge that Xi Jinping faced was the COVID pandemic, because China's economy went down greatly in the past 3-4 years. And but the Xi Jinping, he made a very unique decision. That is to continue his term. Because before him that all Chinese highest leader only served 2 terms maximum, 10 years. But he extended his term, and so on the one hand that China is facing a lot of problems domestically, but on the other hand that he want to expand, even continue himself as the highest leader. So this is the atmosphere or the situation he faced before the party meeting. And so I think that he tried very hard to make the society believe that he is the only leader and he is a paramount leader who could only lead the country. And so he basically want to consolidate his own leadership and also the ruling base of the CCP.
But would you say it's very hard to tell how people on the ground in China feel, given that censors go and clear out social media? There's so much censorship. We're not seeing proper data coming out of China. But would you say, what would you say do people really feel about him? Can we get an idea from where we are as to how the people of China are feeling about the leadership of Xi Jinping?
Yeah, okay. Because of the tight media control in China today, so if you look at the Chinese official media or information released by Chinese government, you can hardly know the truth. But we know that a lot of like video clips or information released through social media, and also a lot of the Chinese fleeing the country, going to Mexico, going to America, and also in Taiwan. We also could get information from China inside. So I think right now, if we want to know the real situation in China, we have to collect information from different place to place, and then try to, just like puzzle, we try to put them together and try to get the real picture. I would say that China's economic situation is no good, and domestically, the disparity, discontent is growing, and also other problems, including the ethnic tension, unemployment. The youth were very unsatisfied, about the government in the future. So I think this kind of discontent situation is growing. I'm not saying that it's going to be a big crisis very soon, but I think this situation will continue for some time.
We've also seen him reorganize the military leadership in many ways, reshuffle, purge people out. What can you read into this? And what does that mean for Taiwan?
Well, I think a military reshuffle last year surprised a lot of people in Taiwan and also around the world, because these people were considered as loyal allies to Xi Jinping, but they were purged, and including not just the defense minister, but the foreign minister. I think for people on Taiwan, our interpretation that is that Xi Jinping now he doesn't have many people to trust. And because he also has to be responsible for picking up the wrong people to work on this job. So I think that in future that unless he try to listen to different opinions, otherwise that he might make more mistakes like this in his decision-making style.
Right, and so those problems, along with the fact that the economy doesn't look like it's going to recover anytime soon. And then you add to the fact that you've got a large part of the population very dissatisfied. To distract from all of that, how likely is it the Chinese government is going to use nationalism and target Taiwan and focus people's attention on what they call reunification with Taiwan?
Well, that is their only choice, because China's CCP they only rely on 2 tools to consolidate their power base. One is economic growth, the other is nationalism. And right now, apparently, economic tool is no longer useful, and so they have no choice but to rely on nationalism. So increasing this tension with the outside world, particularly with Taiwan and with the US, Actually, for us, this look very aggressive and irresponsible. But for Xi Jinping and the CCP, this is their natural choice. But the price is that it creates more unstable and dangerous situation as we see today.
So how are we reading it from Taiwan then? And is Taiwan preparing for some kind of situation where Taiwan will have to fend off any kind of attack from China in the near future?
I think that Taiwan, of course, militarily, we have to be fully prepared. And also, we have to maintain our national security. But I think the important thing is that Taiwan has to reach out to the whole world. We make more friends. And we make people know that Taiwan is a responsible power, and Taiwan is in the hub, of the world facing China. So I think that we have to make China know that you can be a great power, you could be a big military power, but you have to be a responsible power. Maintaining regional security, maintaining good relations with neighbors, including Taiwan, is your priority. Actually, Taiwan make a huge contribution to China's economic growth. And even today, the bilateral trade ties still continue. So if you keep using this kind of intimidating strategies against Taiwan, I think that this is not a very responsible way, to be a world leader or to be a great power.
Thank you so much. That was Chen Mumin joining us from the National Hsing University in Taichung City. It's great to get your insight. And for our viewers everywhere, it has been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you'd like to add to the dialogue, do join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.